In this short video, I will be showing how to make something move in Maya, in other words, how to animate very simply. So I'm going to create an object and perhaps another object so we can kind of see one object moving against another. So the shortest or the easiest way to animate something is to simply create keyframes in this timeline down here. So if I'm at frame 1, which is where my playhead is, you can move this playhead just by dragging. You can set a keyframe for that in the channel box. Now if you want to just move it in one direction, you'll notice that the channel box numbers in the translate Z right over here are moving, and you can even type numbers in there if you like. And certainly you could just say key selected. I right clicked on that to say key selected to create a key. It puts a little red strike right there. And then if I move the playhead down the road a little bit, we're at, let's see, what's our frame rate? We're at 24 frames a second. That's where it says that right here. So if I go down 24 frames, it'll be 1 second in time. I can move it right there, and if I could either say key selected again to set that key, you can also turn on the auto key, which is right here, this little circle right here. If it's on, it'll be with red around it. So what the auto key does is that every time you move something, it knows to set a key. Now, you could also just hit the S key on your keyboard. Now watch what happens if I do that here at frame 1. It keys everything. It basically turns everything into a keyable channel. There's probably way more channels than you have to really worry about. You got rotates, you got scales, everything is in there, right? So it just sort of does everything. So that's kind of the quick down and dirty way to kind of just get it all if you don't know what you're going to be keying. And then hit S again at the new spot. And so if I go to frame 24 and hit S again, it's going to say, okay, now there's a key for all of them at frame 24. If I want to pause the animation right there, let's say before it makes a new move, I could just go down the road a little bit in time. Remember, this is a timeline down here. Let's say I wanted to pause for 1 second. I'll go to frame 48, 24 and 24 is 48, and I'll set a key again. So that basically says, I hit S to do that. That basically says between 24 and 48, do nothing. But you have to say do nothing in that key space. And then I'll just go some random frame down the road, and let's say I'll go up now and hit, I can hit S to either key all of it. And I'm just going to kind of make a few more keys here. I'm going to hit S just to kind of make sure everything gets keyed. And I'll go down the road. So let's see how, here's your transports, in other words, play and pause and all that. This one right over here will get you back to frame 1, or else you can manually drag it. So here's the animation. So pauses, goes up, down, and over. And then it loops. It'll loop back. And it'll just keep looping like this. And if you want to make the timeline longer, you can do that. You could either drag this little box right here. It'll increase the timeline that you see, which means the playhead will play it for a longer period of time. You could also type in, you see how the numbers changing in this box. When I drag it, click and drag it, you can type in a number too. And then this box over here is the total number of frames available. And you can change that too. You can make that like 1,000, if you want it for be a really long time. And the same thing on this side. These you could really just kind of leave at frame 1. But here's what happens when if I want to zero in, let's say around frame 90 over here, I could drag this side and it will start to zero in. In other words, here are the frames in my timeline. I can even get it further zeroed in. I can get smaller and smaller. This is only now between 94 and 115. It's barely showing anything. So this kind of creates the start and end of your timeline. It's just kind of for convenience in case you need to zero in on a frame somewhere. You can also drag frames if you hit the wrong number of frame. if you hold your Control and Shift key and then click, it will give you these arrows, and then you can drag a frame. And Control and Shift, that's on my my Mac. I think it's the same for PC. I don't think that changes. So I think it's still going to be it's the two keys in the corner, Control and Shift. Anyway, so there's your animation. So now in order to render this, let me just make some colors here so we can see this a little better. I'll assign a new material, and I'm going to make that red, and I'll make this one yellow or something. And if you want to see what a picture of this will look like, in other words, a render, you can click this second little clacker box right here, and there's what it will actually look like. You can add a light if you want, create lights. I'll add a directional, which is like a sunlight. It only responds to rotation, doesn't matter where I put it. And then if I want to see approximation of the light, I'll hit the number 7 key, and that will show me approximately how it's going to look. So you notice, watch what happens if I try to move it around. Nothing happens. It doesn't respond to being moved in space. It only responds to rotation. So it doesn't matter where you put it. I just put it in a convenient spot so I can get to it easily if I'm trying to see something. And now if I do the rotations, then you'll see different angles and things. And let's do a quick render again. There it is. If you need to zoom in, you can just zoom in on your window here. Hit render again, and now it's zoomed in a little bit more. You can always save these individual frames, save image. But now if you want to make the movie of the whole thing happening, go to your render settings, which is the fourth clacker box, has a little gear on it, and set a couple of things. One, what it's gonna do is it's not gonna render like a movie. It's gonna render a series of images that you have to then turn into a movie. So it'll be an image sequence that you have to turn into a movie. First thing you want to do is change this format, this image format. Maya IFF is only readable by Maya, and you have to have something readable by Premiere, Adobe Premiere. So we'll go to JPEG. So we'll have a series of JPEG images. And right now, let's see, this is saying name for your frame animation. It's saying name plus extension. In other words, whatever it is, .jpeg. It's single frame. It's not going to do an animation. So you have to change this to name number extension. You always want to put the extension last. In other words, it's going to be, mymovie.001.jpg. The extension being the .jpeg at the end. It has to be that order. Otherwise, Premiere won't understand that this is going to be an image sequence to turn it into a movie. So it's got to be name number extension every time. So there, that's good. And you could give it a name if you want. Right now it's saying the file name is just going to use whatever my scene name is. I could call it, movie or something. Movie. Give it whatever name you want. So now it's gonna read as movie.001.jpg, movie.002.jpg. It'll be like that as it makes the sequence. Here, the start frame and the end frame, you're gonna tell it, okay, what range on this timeline do you want to make that sequence? 10 frames, that's gonna be about less than a third of a second, right? So in this case, maybe I want 100 frames. So I'll say start at frame 1, end at frame 100. Okay, there, that looks good. We're only using the perspective camera right now. That's all good. And then how big do you want these frames? Right now, it's 540 pixels by 960. That's a pretty small movie. You can put any numbers in here that you like, or you can use some of these presets and it'll put the numbers in for you. Like if you want to be in HD, for example. If I want to say full HD 1080, that's like 1080 by 1920, I think. Yeah, 1920 by 1080. That's HD. That's like your HD video. And that's it. So you sort of set the size, you set your start and end frames, and tell it to be a JPEG, name, number, extension, give it a name. And then have a look at where it's going to save all those frames. Right now it's going to put it desktop. Here's a folder I made called render test images. Yours might say something like, default project or something if you haven't created a project, which is fine. You can render it in whatever default project it's trying to put. but at least pay attention to where it's putting it, because that's where you're going to find all of those JPEGs. And so you'll need to know where it puts them. Otherwise, they're going to get lost, and you'll be having to try to search for them. Okay, so after you've done that, you go to Render in the settings right here. So you say the rendering menu, you'll have different stuff up here. And when the new menu item that's going to come up is the render. And you say batch render, so that will render the whole batch of images. In other words, all 100 images that I told it to do in the timeline. So you can say batch render, and it will then do some stuff down here. And you'll see here at the very bottom box what's happening. So right now it's saying it's rendering image number 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It goes pretty fast because I don't have any complex light or shadows, so it should go super fast, depending upon how fast your processor is. That's really what it's about. We're going to be done now. And it says that it's done, rendering completed. Now you have to open up Premiere and bring in that image sequence so you can then turn it into a movie. And then once you do that, that's it. That's all there is to it. Then you'll have your movie for your animation. And you don't necessarily have to use Premiere to translate the image sequence into a movie. There are other programs. QuickTime used to do it, like QuickTime 7 used to be able to import an image sequence and just turn it directly into a movie. But any video editor generally will do that. So I'm going to just do like a new project. Doesn't really matter. I'll just hit OK. The main thing is I need to import those images and turn it into a movie. I don't really care where it puts it. So I'm going to import. Okay, so once you get to the folder where it saved the images, you'll probably see a series of folders like this, and then there'll be an images folder with the numbers, movie.0078.jpg, just like I said, how it would make the sequence. So I'm going to pick frame 1 of this, movie.00, there it is, and don't hit import right yet, because it's going to import it as a single image, and you won't get your sequence. You have to hit the options button right here, and then say it's an image sequence. Honestly, if I had written this program, I would have just made this little box always visible. I don't understand why you have to hit that options key. Anyway, you click image sequence, you hit import, it then knows it's a sequence, it's going to look for a sequence of images, and then it brings it in here to your bin, and then you can drag and drop it into the timeline. And here's your playhead. You can now see the movie right there. You can even add sound, whatever, if you want to, and then the only thing you got to do now is export the media. So file export opens up the window, and you don't want it to be a JPEG sequence. Actually, you want this to be a movie. You can simply hit a QuickTime would be fine. H64 is really probably best. It's a compressed movie. If you're going to upload it to YouTube, whatever you want to do. I mean, I think H264 over here is probably your best shot. So hit H264, leave everything else as it is. Although you may want to see where it's going to put it before you hit export. And you can name it too. So here's the output name. Click on it, and mine's going to be called movie.001. I'm going to call it like movie again. And I can maybe put it on my desktop and then hit save and then hit export. So at least I know where it's going to go. You hit export, it does its thing, it's done, you got your movie, and that's all there is to it.